Hello everybody, Demonr here, and today I am going to be reviewing Mandalorian's race from the DGT GR3EVO Cup, race 5, so that's last week's race, not this week's race, not the race we had yesterday, because Mandalorian wasn't in that race. So I'm going to review his race from last week. Now, he did ask me to, so if I say anything you don't like, Mandalorian, it's your own fucking fault. What I will say though is feel free to check out his YouTube channel called the Mental Mando Experience. If I remember, I'll try and put a link in the description for some interesting content. It's worth checking out, that's for sure. But yeah, so I'm going to be doing a review here now. For anyone that has seen the other videos or hasn't seen the other videos, I have done a review of, I did Fluffy Planet, Formula Gary, Lewis, and yeah, Mandalorian asked me to do his as well. I am going to get going in just a second. It's just that I am trying to share the link while also get onto it live as well. Okay, so this was from Circuit de San Croix B2. Mandalorian is starting in 12th place because he's second place in the current championship standings. So let's see how Mandalorian got on, shall we? Actually, you know what? Before I get going, I'm going to start off with, we watched Fluffy Planet, we watched Formula Gary. Neither of them did a dive bomb. Place your bets now on whether Mandalorian has more dive bombs than Fluffy and Gary. Let's find out. TC on at the start. Man, I'm not going to come. Interesting. TC on at the start, but wasn't flooring it. With TC on in this car, you might as well floor it. Oh, that's a tight gap to go for. Okay, he's realised that. That's good, and he's entering the corner safely. Good to see. Good to see. Means he started the race with a calm head at least. Now I do know he didn't have any practice. Literally the 15 minutes before the race he did a handful of laps and that was it. So could be a tough one for him. He may get caught out in a few places, but at the moment he's keeping himself safe. Was being aware, I would not have expected to see Mandalorian lifting off. Now he's getting a bump draft from me, but there isn't anywhere for him to go. Nice, knocks it down to third, so he already knows that he can't push it in fourth round there. Now this could get interesting because there isn't anywhere for him to go, and he's not even trying to get into the corner. That's nice drive. That's how to avoid carnage. Oof! Well, that was Lewis. But yeah, I mean that was good from James. He didn't even attempt to really enter the corner. There was too many cars there. It's too busy. So at the moment, caution working for him. Little wiggly on the curb. SRI facing the wrong direction. So this might be the first opportunity to chuck. Now the interesting thing here is that obviously Demonr, oh yeah, he's going for the inside line, but he's doing it safely. At least he did it safely. Car fully under control. I was going to say, yeah, Demonr, championship rival, couple of cars ahead, so it'd be easy for the Mandalorian to think, gotta make moves, but Fluffy's done a nice move on him. Yeah, it was perfect timing that, Rich. But once again, I mean it is James, but James here is not attempting, when there's cars around him, I'm liking this, he's not attempting to get into the apex of corners. Now that's the lack of practice showing. Downshift into third. Oh, and this resulted in contact. You know what, that's unlucky. That is simply a lack of practice. I mean, you look at what happens here into this final corner. He downshifts too soon. in a moment, goes down to 4th. That's what really allows Fluffy in, but he's not trying to get to the apex, so that's, although it's not a great entry, it's a good mid-corner and exit. And again at turn 1, he doesn't go for attacking the apex of the corner, he can't. Yeah, there's cars there, so he's not even trying. But here's where the lack of practice comes in, because with a bit of practice, James would have known that this first apex, you can still attack it quite quick, you just have to lift off. You don't need to downshift. But unfortunately, James's lack of practice in that situation sees him on the brakes, down to 3rd gear, trying to recover up to 4th, now gets the understeer on the curb. If you remember from Gary's, Gary's video, I mentioned that if you take the tight entry here, you have to slow down a lot to make, or not slow down, but you have to slow down more to make the next corner. But if you do still make the curb of the next corner, you end up getting a bounce of understeer, and you'll see that happen with James's car, and that's what results in the contact. There's the bounce, and now he's out of control. And yeah, in all fairness, I wouldn't blame SGP for that. I wouldn't necessarily blame Mandalorian for that, because looking at it and knowing that he's not had the practice, I would say yes, it was more on his fault, but it's not like he hasn't done anything dodgy, and in that situation it's not like a penalty would need to be applied to SGP, although SGP is saying that it was SGP's fault. Now the interesting thing here is, and James has now been involved in an incident, so how is his head going to cope? We saw what happened with Fluffy and with Gary as to how they drove after an incident, and to be fair, James braking early, not trying to make it into the apex when he can't, so at the moment driving level-headed. Can't believe I'm saying that, but yeah, he's driving level-headed. Ooh, Groover trying to squeeze into the gap there as James was closing it off. Gonna be careful here, gonna get understeer. Oh, he was lucky. He got the understeer, but he was just ahead of Bunsell. Defending now to Rich Blues. Compromised his exit though. Yeah, Rich has got a run on him, look. James is he going to defend? No, he's not. He's going for the slipstream. Brakes early, that's fair enough. Wasn't quite expecting Bunsell to chuck it in there, but to be fair, that's a cheeky little move from Bunsell. And Mandalorian, one of the early pitters. Now his tyre wear wasn't bad, so I mean, I know that the early pit stop was just to try and get an undercut on the pack, so that when everyone else pits, he'd be ahead of them. I mean, it's an interesting tactic, and it is a tactic that's worked in this season, because otherwise 3 other cars wouldn't have done it with him. It's just that this race, not quite working. You're going to have to be careful here if you look up the inside. Yeah, you see, he's up and down on the gears, and that's possibly from the lack of practice. With more practice, he'd have been able to find out. Nice move, that. Nice move. Little risky, but Steve was aware that he was there. Yeah, so with more practice through the fast S's, he'd have found out that all he'd need to do is keep it in 5th and just do little lifts. Turning in a little early, a bit like Gary was. Interesting. Is he defending? Oh, there's Lewis, so it's spin around. I'm just wondering if he was defending here. Okay, Steve F1 is close. So he's not defending this corner, but if he's not defending up here, then he might as well stay on the racing line. He's braked early, so he could have gone back to the racing line. He's going to compromise his exit a little bit. And there's Lewis facing the wrong way. Silver Shadow going a little defensive. SGP threading the needle. Silver Shadow thinking about doing the same. Tricky one, that. Tricky one. I mean, James did well to avoid everything there, but ended up losing a position to Steve. Well, so far it's a calmish drive from James. I mean, he's a little erratic on the gears, but that's just down to lack of practice. Okay, he's got a run here, but making it 3 wide. If at the braking point he's not ahead, he might have to back out of this one. He got a little lucky there that Gary backed out of that one. I will admit that's not a move that I would have gone for. Well, that's not true. If you find yourself in this position, personally, what you've got to look at is, okay, yes, you're 3 wide, but when you get up towards the braking point, if you're still 3 wide, the person on the inside hasn't got the corner. The person on the inside has the tightest angle of a corner, which means they have to slow down the most. I will say on this occasion, I think James definitely got a little lucky that Gary was driving a little safer, because that allowed James to take a little more time to get the car slowed down. So we're at the 100-metre marker board and Gary's now on the brakes. James is just about at the same time but comes off them a little sooner. So at that point now, Gary has backed out of it. Now that may be because Steve is coming across, but James has still got the tighter line. Even though he's got room in front of him, if you're going to make any kind of move like this, you have to make sure that you get 0 understeer. Because if you understeer in this corner and hit the car next to you, it's your fault, not theirs. Now, in a way, luckily for James, I think, because of the lack of practice, he took 3rd gear around there and it allowed him to get it slowed down. But again, there's the lack of practice showing that if he'd have known he could have held 5th gear all the way around that corner, he'd be able to fight the position a bit more. Okay, looking at this, it's going to get busy up ahead, so already got to be thinking, where am I going to go? Oh, and Gary's trying to sneak up around the outside, so James is trying to close that off a little bit. Oh, sounds like Bunzel's just been rear-ended. Well, we'll say it does appear that James is trying to use a lot more engine braking than brakes. I'm just going to look at his braking usage. So I'm sure he's downshifting before he's on the brakes. Yeah, he is. Okay. What I would say with that is, you have to be very careful with that, because, I mean, in a real car, you'd effectively get rear locking. If you downshift and it's bouncing the limiter, effectively, the wheels are going too fast for the gear that you're in. So they can't speed up, they can only do one thing, and that is slow down. Now James may be trying to use that to his advantage in braking, but it will result in the evil tyre wear. To be fair, in these cars you're much better off hitting the brakes, waiting a moment, and then popping it comfortably down the gears. It makes the car so much more stable. Because the other thing is, well, if you downshift and you're hitting the limiter, one thing that should be telling you as a driver is you're in the wrong gear. You need to be in a higher gear, or you need to be on the brakes. Okay, he's getting a little busy. James is going to be on the outside of the next corner, but if he plays this right, he should be able to get a switch back on Groover. No, he's backed out of it. Well, actually, he hasn't backed out of it. He's downshifted again. What's going on there, James? Do you not like gearboxes? It's not a technique I would recommend. There's some cars that you can do that kind of driving in. F1 cars, Super Formula, the Red Bull Junior, you can do that, but that's because they lose speed very, very quickly. Ooh, ran a little bit wide there. Gave Twilight a bit of a nudge in. I wasn't really watching there, to be honest. I'm just trying to think as to why James would be shifting before his braking. To be fair, James, he was taking it cautious until about mid-corner, and then he was like, no, fuck it, plant the throttle. Maybe a little harsh on Silver Shadow, that one. He is getting a little bit swamped now. So this is where James would be better off kind of protecting his own position and attacking when opportunity arises. And what he's doing now is he's bump drafting Steve to get Steve ahead of Rich. Interesting, James backed out there like Gary did on the previous run through that corner. But again, James with the downshift there, he's killing his speed. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I mean, I don't mean to be digging James, and like I said, to be fair, he hadn't practiced, so he wouldn't necessarily know. But so I'm not sort of digging him, but what I want to kind of have a look at is what James's speeds are through these corners, right? And I'll compare it then to Steve F1. So minimum and maximum speed through this next corner coming up. So 125, 130, 137, 38, down to 118. Okay, so was it 138 on the way in? I think 118 on the way out. Right, okay, so let's have a look then at Steve F1's speed through there. Now, even if Steve's speeds are different, it has a massive effect on the tyre wear. But I've got a feeling Steve's speed should be higher. Okay, 130, 138, 127. So because Steve was only doing a lift, he's going through that corner sort of 9 mile an hour faster, and then obviously that's faster in this next corner and the corner after and the corner after. So in a way it does kind of show the not the necessity, the advantage of getting practice in. Or if I've done a guide video, watching them. Interesting as well, SGP saying that because he's got traction control on, that's why it's not kicking the rear out. That could be very, very true. Although his TC's not kicking in when he's downshifting, so you're not quite right on that one, Steve, unfortunately. I mean, we could just call him a pussy for having TC on, but well, we wouldn't do that, would we? To be fair, I'd rather people use TC if they need to or want to. If it means they enjoy their racing more, then so be it. Me personally, I prefer to be fully in control of my right foot. Interesting. Right, okay, now I know that this is something, I've just seen something there that is something that I have noticed of James's driving before. I know I've mentioned it to him before, and I don't necessarily think it's because of a lack of practice at this track, right? But if you watch my videos, what I tend to do is when it comes to a braking zone, I'll approach the braking zone, I come off the throttle and I'm on the brakes, and I'm on the brakes once, and then I come off the brakes. And every now and again I may need to give it a tiniest little bit of a dab if I'm over speed or brake late. Now on this occasion, watch James's brake icon, because what you'll see James is trying to do is, because he's going for the early downshift to try and get the engine to slow the car down rather than the brakes, potential theory being that it'd be nicer on the tyres. Personally, I don't think it works. But also, what James would still be better off doing then, if he was going to stick to downshifting early, is braking once. compared to what he does do. Because what you'll see he does in this corner kills tyres. So watch that brake marker, not in this corner, in this next one coming on. On, off, on, off, on, off, on. So because he's on it, off it, on it, off it, on it, off it, basically what that is doing is, you'll notice it was all red as well. Well, actually, no, it could just be the replay. But by dabbing the brakes like that, you're effectively shifting the balance forwards, backwards, forwards, backwards, forward. So you're unbalanced on the way into a corner. Whereas if you can brake once and get all the weight sort of transfer going to the front of the car, then you've got the grip to turn, and it's better for your tyres. So brakes, that's much better, and the car's lovely and balanced. SGP saying the TC does flash. So let's have a look then. No, although he wasn't hitting the limiter on that occasion. So, oh, SGP's into the barrier. So, good evasive by Mandalorian there. Don't go for the inside. He's going to cover the inside. Oh no, he's not going to cover the inside. Go for the inside then. Bit late. That's going to get deep. That's going to get deep. There's the understeer. Oh, he's got lucky there. He's lucky that Steve went deep as well, in all honesty there, because Steve F1 got a big chunk of understeer, or he was on the brakes more to make sure there was no contact between himself and James. Now Steve braked deep. He braked too late. So I'll be honest, James got lucky there, very lucky. Now let's see if James hold it in fifth this time. No, drops it, loses the position. Nudge from behind, can't fault the guy behind on that one. Now, can you imagine if James wasn't really prepared for doing this race? I could understand that throughout the course of the race, he might not clock on to just sticking with fifth gear through the fast S's there. But what I would say is, in a normal situation, it wouldn't take that many occasions of going through those corners, bouncing off fourth gear, to go, hang on, I'll try fifth. Oh, late move, but it's on. I've got to say, I'm not a fan of the downshifting here. Something I just want to have a quick look at, right, is I know that Steve F1 drives in a particular way. I haven't done a review on him. I'm not going to, because he fucking won last night's race, the wanker. He could do the fucking reviews this week. But I want to have a look at Mandalorian's tyre wear, because these two pitted at the same time. So I just want to do a quick comparison. So their tyre wear, let's see, yeah, Mandalorian has more rear tyre wear. Now, considering it's got traction control on, and Steve F1 hasn't, the Mandalorian should have a lot less rear tyre wear, but because of the downshifting before braking, it is causing rear tyre wear. The rears are locking up. Now the front tyre wear isn't too bad, it's pretty comparable, so I definitely would say to Mandalorian, try and brake first, brake, wait, shift, or brake and shift, not shift, then brake and then shift and shift. It makes things a hell of a lot more balanced, a lot easier to drive as well, to be fair, because every time that car's bouncing off the limiter, it's making the car unstable, it's moving, it's twitching, and it's doing things and moving weight balances. So on that occasion, he wasn't bouncing the limiter, and even though it was tight and he went in quick, he was able to control it because the car was balanced. Okay, he's getting brave on his brakes now into that corner, but that was much better. I mean, listen, does he hit the brakes before he shifts? Brakes, then shifts, and look how much more balanced the car is. I mean, what I would say for anyone that doesn't get a chance to do a lot of practice is go on the brake markers. Ooh, he's turning early, taking in the different line. Got a bit of understeer there. It did well to avoid Steve F1. And to be fair, Steve F1 did well to avoid him. Now, he may have been going defensive on SGP, but I'm guessing not. Otherwise, he'd have done it in that corner. But he is giving him the room as a few cars head into the pits. Now, he's not defended at the moment because he's sucking up Steve F1's slipstream. SGP kind of having a look but not going for it. James closing the door just enough. That's good racing. And again, downshifts. The one problem with that is, I mean, I just want to have a look. I'm going to go on board SGP here, because what I'm not sure of is whether when James just downshifts, whether it applies the rear brake lights, because if it doesn't, I would have to say it's quite a dangerous thing to do, especially in a fast corner. I mean, sorry, I was filling in my mouth. I can't fully blame Mandalorian on that because it's simply a lack of practice. I know that if he knew he could go into the first one flat out in fifth, he'd have fucking done it, right? I know that. And if he wanted to look after his tyres, he'd still go in it in fifth, but he'd just left. So in this particular corner, if SGP's following him flat out, okay, there were little flashes of brake lights. Now, I'm not sure if Mandalorian actually did apply the brake. Now, if he did, fair enough. The car behind gets the brake lights to react to, even though you don't have a lot of time. Yeah, so he is sort of gently dabbing the brakes. So, at least with that, he's giving the driver behind a little bit of warning. But it's just it's a very tricky situation if you're in a high-speed corner where the norm would be to not downshift and you are downshifted. Oh, he's ran wide. Oh dear. Oh, careful, careful. You know what? He's coped with that quite well. Right, I was talking, so I wasn't really looking at what happened there. So let's have a look. Does he shift before he brakes? Because it can... No, it was on the brakes, just not enough. And understeer's come in. A lot of steering lock applied. And let's see, how does he navigate this? Very well, to be fair. His car was out of shape. And, okay, you could say that it'd be easy to say that he should have moved for Gary there, but to be fair, the best thing James could do is stay going in a straight line. If he moves all over the place, then it causes carnage elsewhere. Okay, now it's possible he could get overheated. Groover's up the inside, and James is going to give him the room on the brakes. Much harder on the brakes. Oh, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he pits at the end of this lap. I think he's struggling on his front tyres now. Ooh, sandwiched. Yeah, not a lot he could do there. I thought Twix only had 2 biscuits, not 3. Yeah, I mean, although James's front tyre wear doesn't look too bad, one of the effects you can get of shifting before you're braking is that, yes, the rear tyre's locking up, but also the car can push on. You get push on understeer, right? Now, it can not be very noticeable while you've got decent tyres, but once your tyres do start wearing a bit, it becomes very noticeable. So it's possible that at this point, James has taken a little too much out of his front tyres, and although he's now starting to apply the brakes in a better way, unfortunately the grip just isn't quite there to cope with it. So let's see what happened here then. I've got to say, if I was Silver Shadow, I wouldn't have put my car in that position. Mainly because it's a little bit too late. I mean, I tend to go on the rule of, and I think it's a fair rule, that if you're not already alongside at the braking point, then you shouldn't be going for it. And the braking point is here. So, okay, you could potentially say he is up alongside, but when you look at this specific corner, this is a 90-degree right-hand corner. It's an evil corner, and there's two cars on the left. I'd back out of this one because chances are, to attempt the overtake, you're going to have to brake late, but if you brake late, you're going to go straight on. And I think James is now in a sort of catch-22 situation where he can see that Groover is trying to squeeze over towards the corner, but Groover, I'm telling you, is not aware, or should I say Peppa Pig is not aware, that there's a shadow over here. So I can't blame Silver Shadow for Groover squeezing Mandalorian into Silver Shadow, but I think as a driver you always have to be aware that there could be more than one car next to you. James is in a situation where he has the right to go for the corner, giving space to Groover. He can't do anything about Silver Shadow. So as it gets to this point, I mean, Mandalorian is trying to give the space to Groover. Groover's trying to squeeze Mandalorian, but doesn't know that Silver Shadow's there, and there's nothing that Mandalorian can do. And unfortunately for Silver Shadow, if Groover wasn't there, then I wouldn't be surprised if Mandalorian would have given Silver Shadow a bit of room around this corner, but he didn't have the choice to do so. So, interestingly, on this situation, I'd kind of have to say, Silver Shadow kind of put his car somewhere it didn't really belong. Groover squoze James too much, considering that there was another car there, and in actual fact, James did nothing wrong. Holy shit. I'm going to have to review that. But no, I mean, to be fair, James didn't do much wrong there at all. And I think Silver Shadow perhaps realised that he'd not done necessarily the right thing there, because he didn't floor it to try and drive off. He backed off and made sure he was still behind. Oh, got on the curb. Yeah, I think James will be pitting on this lap. Now, is he wanting some bacon? Is Groover going to defend? Oh, James is going for it on this occasion. Now you see... Oh, ooh. Now, the interesting thing about this corner is there are kind of two lines around the corner. There's the fastest line, which is take a late turn in, and then there's the very aggressive, tighter entry, which is quicker on the entry but is slower on the exit. Okay, so I would have to look here as to, was James too far back to go for this, in my opinion? Let's have a look. Given that his tyres are suffering a little bit, that is something you have to bear in mind. Okay, I would say this is a risky one. There's a fine line between doing someone under braking and dive bomb. I'm not saying that this is a dive bomb, but I wouldn't necessarily call it a safe attempt at an overtake either. The reason being, there's a car length between James and Groover. So James may be looking at this and going, well, I'm better than Groover, I can do this. Okay, understandable. However, once you're at this point and the car ahead is at the braking point, you have to be aware as the attacking driver that they have the right to go for the apex of the corner, because at the last safe point you are too far back to attack. So if the car ahead wants to go for the apex, it's their right to do so. Because one thing to look at it is Groover, for him to be able to see where James is, has to either look at the mirrors on the car or press a button to look in the rear view. Well, you don't want to be looking behind when you're applying the brakes, so you've got to look before you brake, right? So if Groover looks, sees James here, I'd look at it and go too far back. Then Groover doesn't get a chance to look again to where James might be. And okay, he's got the radar on, but with the radar, James would be sort of teetering on the edge of the bottom of the radar, and then all of a sudden, as you get to the apex, all of a sudden he's alongside, and there's not a lot a driver in Groover's situation can do. Now, don't get me wrong, there is also a fine line between an overtake like this being a beautiful overtake. But once again, the key factors are, is the car fully under control? Does the driver get any understeer, pushing them across the road and hitting the other car? For it to be a beautiful overtake, it needs those factors involved. Because if it does understeer and hit the other car, it means that you've not done them under braking, you've done yourself under braking. So, I mean, it's hard on the brakes. He has got it under control. On the exit, he is understeering a little bit. He could have done with popping it down to second, in all honesty. Because taking that tighter line, you do have to be very careful on the exit. Because, well, interestingly, if he had traction control turned off, he'd be alright in third gear. Because when he floors it, the rear would slip a little and turn the car for him. But because he's got TC on, the big woofter, it kills the throttle, stops the little slide that would help him, and it results in a little bit of understeer. Groover, he's coming for the apex of the corner, and like I said, personally, he had every right to do so, right? Because at the start of the braking point, James was too far back to go for the move, for him to safely go for the move. So if I was in Groover's position, I would be going for the apex of the corner as well. And if it turned out that there was a car there, I'm sorry, but that's a late move, mate. Now James might disagree, but that's the way I see it. That's the way it is. And this is one thing that does get me sometimes when, I mean, this is not a dig at James, and I don't mean to be picking on James with this, but it's one of those. You can see a lot of times that someone will turn into a corner and all of a sudden there's a car there. Now, both people might have the argument of, like, you've dive bombed me, and the other one's saying, well, no, you've turned in on me. Well, that's where you have to roll it back, and that's why the start of the braking point is a key feature. If you're not alongside at the start of the braking point, then, in my opinion, you don't have a right to the corner because you're too far back. Now, you may be able to beat somebody under braking, but then you've got to do it safely. And if that other person does turn in towards the corner, you cannot blame them because you have given them no opportunity, no time to see you chucking it up the inside. Food for thought. Also, personally, why attack on the way in and have a slow exit when you can attack on the way out and have a fast exit? So he's having a look up the inside now. I mean, that's a nice move. He's done the move there. Going to go for the pit lane though. So an interesting first 15 minutes. Okay, so it comes out in 13th place, but that's not too much of a problem. Just seeing that Tyler's saying, in Brands Hatch I noticed that I was slower than everyone else at the exit of the corner. Is that because I had traction control on too? Quite possibly. Depends on which corners, but it is possible because with this Evo, a little bit of wheel spin is not a bad thing, right? Because the rear tyres don't get hurt so much that they're undrivable, and a little bit of wheel spin can send the car in the right direction. It's a little bit like off the start line, you want a little bit of wheel spin. That's the fastest way. But as SGP also says, if you brake too late into corners, then yeah, you get a slower exit, and that is so true as well. That quite often people will attack an entry into a corner and then be so slow on the exit that attacking the entry wasn't worth it, but they think that's the way to do it. Now, don't get me wrong, you can attack an entry and be quick on an entry and get the exit correct and be quick on the exit. But that's not attacking the entry, that's doing the entry correctly. I mean, the way I tend to look at it is, attack the entry by being smooth and quick, right? Smooth and calm and quick. Have the car ready and balanced, so at the point of being on the exit of the corner, you can then really attack the exit. Now, interesting, James kind of being aggressive behind SGP here, but in that corner, I mean, this is interesting actually. I'm going to show that. In this corner coming up, James is calm on the way into the corner, but then there's a certain point where he just goes, right, let's go. Let's see if you can pick it up. Calm, calm, calm. And look at the exit he gets. Now he's got an opportunity to overtake. Now he's sticking SGP on the inside, and he's giving him an even tighter line, which is absolutely fine. Now he goes to the racing line, braking as late as he can. Let's SGP brake late, going to understeer. Okay, he's still ahead, but now James is going to get, or should get, the better run up the hill. Knowing James, he'll probably go for the overtake again up the inside, but SGP won't have any of it. See? That forces James to the outside, but this, I was going to say, could benefit James. I tell you what, SGP, you got so lucky there. James was going to undercut your ass beautifully, but unfortunately for James, Silver Shadow is a sneaky little bastard. I mean, to be fair, this is good from Silver Shadow. Yeah, you two fuck off over there. You mess about. You lose time. I'm going to sit on the racing line. I mean, James does the right thing here. He does the right thing. So, okay, if you're going to defend the corner, fine. I'm going to go all the way back over to the racing line, get it slowed down and undercut your arse, because SGP's line's compromised. Unfortunately for James, Silver Shadow's line isn't compromised. And I will admit again, this is a little late. This is risky for Silver Shadow. It is a little late because at the start of the braking point, he is behind. Now, he's got a different momentum of speed because of the lines they've took around the corner, but still, this is a risky overtake to try, especially given... Let's play it. If you're in this position and you've got two cars, okay, these guys are clearly battling. Where's the point in getting involved? There's not much point in getting involved, because if you get involved at the wrong point, you'll end up getting hit off the track. For example, the move that James makes to get back to the racing line, if Silver Shadow had managed to sort of get in amongst them there, Mandalorian could have moved across and hit Silver Shadow, not realising he was there. Now, I'm not saying that I would blame Silver Shadow for that, but it's just one of those things. If you're behind a couple of cars that are battling, be very, very aware. So, as these cars are going up the hill, you think, okay, everything's normal, everything's fine. What are they going to do? And now at this point says, okay, SGP is going to defend the corner. At this point, Mandalorian, we should know, is going to be coming back to the racing line. Okay, so we, as a driver in this position, you have to be prepared and look at that and go, well, SGP is probably going to do this and Mandalorian is going to do this. Or if SGP goes back to the racing line, Mandalorian might chuck it up the inside. So at this point, Silver Shadow has braked a little bit late. Well, Mandalorian is on the brakes looking at doing the switchback on SGP. Now, to be fair, Silver Shadow has poked his nose in here, but he's still on the brakes. Right? I think he's realised this could be a little bit risky. Now, Mandalorian, all fairness to him, in the battle with SGP, he has spotted that Silver Shadow is there. So well done to Mandalorian on that one. It'd be so easy to not realise that a car is there. And this is something that as a following driver you do have to think about, that Mandalorian is attacking the car ahead. Their focus is on that car, so there is a good chance they might miss you sticking your nose in somewhere like it might not belong. So in all fairness to Silver Shadow, he stays on the brake and he even goes off the track, right? And I've got to say, massive respect, because that is him basically going, okay, that was a little bit risky and I'm going to give him the room. Either that, or he was like, fuck it, James is going to turn it on me. Either one of the two, he did the right thing there, did Silver Shadow. Now, it did mean that it compromised Mandalorian's exit of the corner, and Mandalorian would have got a decent run on SGP here. Now these guys are going to have to be careful because that bunch of cars ahead is really going to get bunched up. Oh, that's unlucky. I don't think there was anything Mandalorian could do that. I don't think there was much SGP could do. I mean, by the looks of it, let's see. Oh yeah, that's where Fluffy got hit by Tyler. I mean, SGP is kind of unlucky. There's not a lot he can do. With that amount of steering lock on, if it hits the brakes, he's understeering into the barrier. He can try slowing down a little bit, but it'd be so difficult. The fact that it's ended up hitting the back of Fluffy and pretty much stopping him dead, putting him into the barrier, and then James... I mean, there's nothing James could have done there, really, I don't think. I mean, okay, maybe he could have hit the brakes, but again, if he hits the brakes, he's going to understeer and hit SGP anyway, so that's massively unfortunate for SGP, that is. If I said hit by Tyler, I did mean hit by Lewis. Okay, so James is still on his fairly new tyres, and it is all getting bunched up again. But we're 18 minutes into this race. Let's see if he's figured out about holding 5th. No, he's still going down to 4th, but he's keeping a higher speed on this occasion. Oh, he's going for the switchback. Nicely done, nicely done. I actually thought there was going to be a moment there where James was going to chuck it up the inside. Oh, it was being bump drafted by Silver Shadow, and then Silver Shadow tagged Bunsel. Oh, careful, careful, careful. And he is. That's nice to see. Hugs that inside. Again, got to be careful here. Oh! Something. Well, I covered that on Fluffies. Oh! Oh, James is slowing down. Who's he slowing down for? Who's he letting past? Steve F1. Okay. So let's see what James... Where is Steve F1? Right, okay, Steve F1 is behind him at the moment. Right. I was going to say, Mandalorian's done nothing wrong here up to this point. And in this position, it'd be very easy to go, well, he's just turned into Groover. But in all fairness, look at where Dave the Ark's coming from. And that barrier that is coming up quick can cause carnage. So I can't blame Mandalorian for moving here. He's done the right thing in giving a bit of room. It's unfortunate that Groover is there. Oh, you know what? James has waited for Steve F1 and Steve F1 fucked up on his own. Oh, James, I think you should appeal for a 10-second penalty to Steve F1. I bet Steve was thinking, oh, I wonder why James is going slow. So I'm guessing that James thought that he had ended up putting, as a knock-on effect, putting Steve F1 into the barrier. Right? Steve F1's not done out wrong. But unfortunately, Mandalorian's had to move because of Dave the Harp, and it has resulted in contact with Groover. But Steve F1 has hit the wall all on his own. SGP, if you're watching this, right, just record that bit and put it in the DGT chat, right, with the comment of, don't worry, Lewis, even race winners do it. So yeah, but I feel sorry for James, although, to be fair, this shows that he had the awareness of realising that there was two cars next to him, but he knew he had to move, he knew there was nothing he could do, and he thought that he had put Steve F1 into the wall. I would much rather see a driver do what James did here and have the respect of everybody else than just go, well, fuck it, it's not my problem. I didn't do it wrong. I do feel for James, though. He didn't have to slow down here, in all fairness. SGP saying, what a knob. I don't think it means it about, hopefully not about James. I'm guessing you're on about Steve F1. Interesting looking at James's brake usage again. It started applying the brakes once to sort of double, triple tapping. I would definitely recommend avoiding that. It does cause an imbalance. One nice press of it, get it down to the right speed, and then away you go. Okay, so that was less of a double tap on the brakes. Okay, come on, James. Keep it in 5th gear. Keep it in 5th. Okay, kept it 130 mile an hour on this occasion. But could still do it quicker. Now, I can understand James might think that it's helping getting around some of the corners by downshifting it, but it's having a worse negative effect in your overall tyre life and balance of the car and general momentum and speed. I mean, putting it into perspective, got a little physical there. I'll have another look at that in a second. But putting it into perspective, I think I showed a bit of Jason the other day, and Jason was so smooth and gentle, but his pace was relentless. It was unbeatable, right? And he never once pushed the car too hard. He didn't have to, and he never had the car out of balance. So although it might at the time feel like it's benefiting with a bit tighter getting around the corner, it is having an overall negative effect. That's going to go wide. Trying to get a little too aggressive or too early on the throttle there. Interesting as well. Sorry to keep pausing this, by the way. Right, if you're going dead straight into a braking zone and you hit the brakes hard once and then gently come off them, you get very good, very stable braking. If you hit the brakes, come off them, as I mentioned, it's very unstable. But if you incorporate that into still going a little bit too quick and potentially still needing to brake a bit going into a corner, the on and off the brakes with steering angle applied creates understeer, and imbalancing the car, as I've mentioned, with weight transfer, because if you're going straight and you hit the brakes, all the weight moves forward. If you steer to the right and hit the brakes, then all your weight doesn't go forward, it goes forward to the front left, right? Which means all of your weight is now being put on one tyre instead of two. So instead of braking and using the maximum grip and then turning, what happens here is as he's dabbing the brakes going into the corner, the car becomes unstable and starts sliding, and you'll hear the tyre squealing. So that last dab of the brakes, although he may feel has pirouetted the car to get it round the corner a bit more, that's caused tyre wear. That's now less grip he's going to have elsewhere. And he could have done exactly the same thing just by braking the once and having better grip. Okay, got to be careful here. Steve's going to understeer. James has spotted that. Nicely done. Now the left-hand side of the track is the faster line here, but James has got the slipstream off Dave the Arp. This is a legitimate opportunity to pass. The one on Groover's risky, but that's fine. Or Groover trying to work his way back. I thought he was trying to say, fuck off. Right, don't chuck it up the inside here. I wouldn't anyway, because Groover's looking. Steve F1's looking. Backs out of it though. Oh, James really could have done with just letting that run out wide. He's boxed Groover in, but Groover's just been bump drafted. Dave the Arp's blocking him off. Now James is getting bump drafted. Ooh. Oh, that's all a little bit messy. I'm going to have a little look back at that. What I would have done if I was James here is braked a little bit more, waited till Groover had gone past, and then gone for the undercut. Now, I'm not sure exactly how many cars are behind. There's a few. So this may play a bit of a factor. Okay, so it's getting busy. I mean, in all fairness, looking at this situation, James has actually got the best position. Dave the Arp's going to have a very tight corner. Groover, he's also going to have a tight corner. James can get over to the racing line. He's got the potential of having the fastest corner. So he's done the right thing here, but now he should be on the brakes. He's on the brakes a little late. Groover's on him a little later, but now this is where, if I was James, he started turning in. I wouldn't. I'd have stayed on the brakes, stayed going straight, let Groover go straight, and then duck underneath Groover, and James now would have been able to work his way towards the apex, but he's now had to wait until the little bit of contact is done, and then he can really turn in. So, okay, he's still made a place, but could have made it a hell of a lot easier for himself. Oh, everyone's getting bunched up behind SGPs, off into the barrier. Oh, Dave the Arp getting a bit out of shape. Interestingly there though, is it because of cars behind? Okay, maybe. James doesn't go over to the racing line. He may be trying to cover... bollocks, wrong button. And I mentioned this with Gary's. Once the other car starts defending, use the whole of the racing line. Looking at it, the cars behind are too far back. So if James at this point, or should I say this point, goes all the way over to the racing line, then when Dave fucks up the corner, James will be able to duck underneath and power through. But because he's not gone all the way over to the right hand side, he's kind of compromised his own corner entry. So when he gets to this bit, he's now got to be careful of any understeer he's going to have, right? Because he's tightened up his entry. Whereas he could have been coming in at more of an angle and just powering out the corner. So now he's got to watch out for the understeer, which is there. And now he's got to get off the throttle, otherwise he's going to spin Dave. And then he can get back on the throttle. So an opportunity to pass, not quite taken. But at least he didn't wipe Dave out. I mean, one thing I will say as well, just for anyone that watches this that wonders why people get pissed off with dive bombers, and that's not me saying that James is a dive bomber. I'm not saying that. He may have been too aggressive on some occasions, but that was a lovely move there. But what I was going to say is, like with that hairpin just then, right? The cars behind were too far behind to attack James. James was in a good position to get over to the right hand side to use all of the road to duck underneath and go for the move. But if one of those cars that's behind him, that is too far behind to go for the move, goes, well, there's space there, I'm going to go into it, they fucking go in there way too fast, way too hot, too hard on the brakes. They're not making the corner. James would have turned in to make the corner properly, and there's a coming together. There's only one person at fault there, and that's the person that's made the late move. Because that's bad driving. And that's why people get pissed off with dive bombers. Especially if they're setting someone up for an overtake. Now, don't get me wrong. There is nothing wrong with one driver setting up another for an overtake and a car that is right up their bumper. That was close. A car that's right up their bumper working their way safely into the gap. That's not a dive bomb. But when people dive bomb as you're setting up an attack, oh, it's fucking annoying. Oh, Dave the Arp taking evasive. Okay, so what, we're 23 minutes into the race. James's front tyres looking a little bit worn. It's been on them 8 minutes, 7 minutes, I think. Now, interestingly, and I keep pausing this, and I don't apologise. I do apologise, but I don't. Right? James in this next corner double brakes. Right now, the first time he applies the brakes, he does it quite nicely. But he comes off the brakes and then applies them again. The problem is his corner's compromised then, and he's slower on the exit. So what I would say is that extra little bit of braking that he reapplies, if he had just kept that on anyway, with the one application of the brakes, he would have been able to have been fully off the brakes at the point he reapplied the brakes, which would have allowed him to turn in and have the grip to turn in and have the better exit. So looking at the brake usage here, he applies the brakes quite nicely. Goes full brakes, lets them off, goes back on. But because at that point he's reapplied them, he'd have been much better off having kept them on and then let them off at that point. Fully slow the car down and let the front have the grip. That's not bad braking. It wasn't on, off. It was on, off a bit, little bit on and fully coming off. But that's more stable than on and off and on and off. So it's on the brakes 3 times. So a bit like with Gary, where Gary was creeping, James is dabbing. Oh, big sideways. Curb sending him sideways there. Oh, little. It's gone deep. Traction control didn't help him there. Right, now, okay, so he's gone deep at the hairpin, and now initially he was in a good position on the racing line. Now, I wasn't looking at his brake usage going into the hairpin, but obviously he's ended up running a little bit deep, so were there multiple dabs of the brake? Not enough brake yet. Okay, so he's gone for gentle braking on that occasion and come off them, and then realised it's not enough and gone on them again, but unfortunately it's still not enough. So yeah, I don't know if it's a technique that James uses, dabbing the brakes a lot, but it is a technique that I would recommend that James tries to work on, of brake once, press the brake once and let it off, and don't press it again. I mean, it's unfortunate here. Oh, bollocks. I wanted to show look at the steering applications. I mean, he's unlucky. On the grass, accelerates, and around he goes. Yeah, just went full throttle a little too soon, and into the barrier he goes. Now loses a shitload of places, and loses one to SGP, who pitted just in front of him a lap ago. So James is now going to be sitting there thinking, I should have fucking pitted on the previous lap. Now, interestingly, there again, it was a gentle application of the brakes, which would have been alright if it had kept it on, but he let it off and then went full brakes. I mean, this car does like you using the brake. You can use the brakes here. I mean, there's some tracks that we've driven where gentle braking is the faster way around the track. But I mean, maybe it's a lack of practice thing again for James. I found with this track, gentle braking around the majority of this circuit didn't work. Okay, Mandalorian Groover, take 2. I'd say that was fair, right? James is closer, much closer on this occasion than last time. So at the braking point, this is now, right, yes, he's behind, but this is now where the opportunity potentially is there to go for the move, but the car ahead on the left, Groover, still technically would have the right to go for the corner. So this is a situation where now, yes, if James is better on the brakes, may be able to go for the move, but has to do it with caution. And the interesting thing I would say here is I think that Groover may have spotted that James has come alongside him this time. Because what Groover, it looks like he's done is he's gone for the corner, but left margin of room. He's left a tiny little bit of room. Some could say not enough. But he has definitely made it very tight for James. And in this situation, I'd be tempted to say that that's fair, because at the braking point, James is behind. So James is only now working his way up alongside. Groover's already turning in towards the corner, right? And now James is kind of going straight and Groover is turning. But James has realised he's going to have to slow it down and take the corner. So it's possible that Groover didn't see him, but at the same time, as rough as that might feel on James, I don't think Groover necessarily did anything wrong there, because once again, wasn't alongside at the start of the braking point. Now, I know that I am fully an advocate of, if a car is alongside you, give them room. Yes, 100% or 99%. That other 1% is when somebody has come from a position I would deem to be too far back. And if you're behind at the braking point, technically you're too far back. So I haven't really got a problem with what Groover did there. And all fairness to James, James gave him the room on the exit of the corner and managed to make the move work. So I would say that would be all fair. Now, that's not to say that the admins would say that that was fair, but I would. Okay, James a little late on the brakes there. I need to stop pausing this and analysing it, really. Otherwise I'll be here all fucking night. I mean, it is interesting though, watching different people going through the race. I mean, I'm not doing this for other racers, I'll say that now. It takes a long time to sit here and go through these. But it is interesting to see how some of the drivers are going about their racing. Ooh. Okay. I don't know if James has got a little heated at the moment. It was very... I don't mean this to... I don't mean want it to take this wrong. It was very messy into that hairpin then. Very on and off the brake pedal and a bit clunky with the gears. And by that, I mean... It wasn't like there was a rhythm to them. That might sound a bit daft, but... When it comes to gear changes, I like to think of doing the gear changes in a rhythm. So if I'm coming up to a hairpin and I've got to go from 6th to 2nd, I try and do it in the same rhythm every single lap, whether it's 1 downshift, then 3 quick ones, or 2 downshifts, a moment, and then 2 more. So it'd be like pop, 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 or pop, 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 pop. Sounds stupid, I know, but it can give you a much better balance of the car, and by giving it a rhythm for every corner as well, it means it's easier to approach every corner in exactly the same way every lap. It helps a lot with knowing what gear you're in without ever looking as well. Now James has taken the final corner in 3rd gear, and I'm not going to fault him on that, because with a lack of practice I can understand it. And the first corner, oh, big crash up ahead, done well. Ooh, got lucky to avoid that. Or is that overtaken under yellows? Oh, 5th gear, Did he not go down to fourth? Oh, he has now. Okay, interesting. Right. I mentioned about knocking it down a gear and hitting the limiter can give you push on understeer. I'm pretty sure that that's what happens with James when he drops it down into fourth on the fourth corner here. Okay, he did drop it down to fourth there. So kept it fifth here, gets a good run. But as he drops it to fourth, maybe not, but I kind of, hard to tell really. But it did look a little bit like you got a bit of push on understeer. Oh, and that's unlucky. I could imagine James sitting there going, Fluffy! What the fuck you doing? So let's have a look. So Fluffy's defending. Interesting. James has turned in too soon, and it's almost like Fluffy's reacted to that and turned in, but Fluffy's turned in too soon. Interestingly, I think Fluffy's just got a shitload more grip than he was expecting. James has kind of spotted it was too soon, but now Fluffy's hit the barrier, and I think even if Fluffy wasn't there, I think James might have hit the barrier. So I wouldn't fault either driver there. That's just unlucky, that is. I could imagine it potentially pissing James off. Silver Shadow, he might be pissed off. Let's have a look. Oh no, or did Silver Shadow bin it on his own? Let's have a look. Oh no, he was hit. Oh, ooh! Oh, that's unlucky. That's unlucky. Where's Mandalorian gone? It looks like Groover might be waiting for Silver Shadow. Yeah, he is, I think. Or he's waiting for James, thinking he spun James. But, I mean, that's an unfortunate incident between James and Fluffy that has had a knock-on effect to other drivers. But I don't think I could blame either one of them for that. I mean, no one's intentionally going to drive into a wall on a corner too soon. A little late on the brakes, but has done well to carry the speed. Okay, let's see if... Look at that. Look at the difference that has had, right? So this shows me that James is fully capable of braking in this way, right? So I don't know why. I don't know if it's James is working on braking this way, but when he gets around another car, he's focusing more on the other car rather than his feet. I've seen his feet when he's driving; they're dancing. But look at how he brakes for this corner, and look how easy the car turns in, and look how easy the car turns out of the corner. One nice big press of the brake pedal. Okay, there was a little dab, but much less, and the car was much more stable, much quicker through the corner, less damaging on the tyres. And again, look at that. That's the best he's taken that corner with one big press of the brake pedal. Is he going to go for it? He's having a look. SGP said, no, you can F off with that one. Now, admittedly, SGP went in there a little bit quick as he was closing the door. Ooh. Oh, who's behind? Groover. Interesting. Nearly runs wide. Okay, he's got SGP right up his arse. Okay. I'm going to go back to just after turn 1, right? Given the way that James has driven turn 2 so far, and that when he's had cars around him, a number of them have been faster than him into that corner. I personally wouldn't look at going for the inside like he does in a moment. So at this point, I think if it was me, I wouldn't look for the inside of the line for the next corner, because other cars have been quicker than me through that corner so far. This is probably where, especially if you've not had any practice, SGP, it wouldn't be a bad idea to follow him through this corner and work out where he's or how he's been losing that little bit of time. James has decided though, Arnie's on the back saying, "You can do it!" So he goes for it. I think might have just touched the back of SGP there, but James has now got to be on the brakes. So even if he'd got up to the inside much smoother, he'd still have to slow it down. So he'd be faster just sticking on SGP's rear bumper.
Sorry, I'm unable to do that.
I'm not talking to you, Siri. Fuck off. Okay, you thought I'd said play faster. Right, okay. Yeah, so now that James has had to slow down there, he's compromised his mid-corner speed, and now he's got to be careful of Groover. Admittedly, SGP's cocked it up anyway, so it might not have been a good idea to follow him. So it's a bit of an odd one, that, because resulting in the overtake with a bit of luck, it could give a kind of false sense of, yes, that was the right thing to do. He's got a bit of a slow exit there. SGP's got the run on him. Now this corner, I think you are better defending the inside. But James is saying, "Oh, ooh, 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 ooh." On first look, I think he may have just left the door open on that one. I mean, James is on the racing line here. Oh, I don't know. It's a bit of a risky one from SGP, that is. I mean, he's close enough that James knows exactly where he is. And SGP, okay, SGP has moved across early enough to let Mandalorian know, I'm going for it, or I could be going for it. Tiny touch of understeering there. A just about fair attempt of an overtake, that. Risky, because to a degree James could have just turned in. But to be fair, in the end, good driving from the both of them. He's gone to shifting before braking again. It's compromised his balance in the middle of the corner. Could compromise his run up the hill, but luckily for him, SGP's being harassed by Groover. Oh yeah, you don't want to do that. Braking on it with a wheel on the grass, yeah, will send the car a bit sideways. Okay, if he takes this corner like he did on the previous lap, one big brake. He didn't need the second dab of brake there. It'd have been okay without that, to be fair. But he has been improving. I can definitely tell that he's working on being a bit smoother under braking. Interestingly, he seems to be smoother under braking when he hasn't got a car in front of him. Okay, so gone for a final pit stop with 6.5 minutes to go. Oh, pushing a bit hard there though. I mean, he is taking these corners in a higher speed now, but it's not benefiting him. It's hurting the tyres, and SGP is still all over him. James is going to need to drop it. Oh, he may have been better off dropping it to second gear there. I wish I could look behind like this and still see the data. Okay, so we saw what happened on the previous lap. This time SGP's got an earlier run. So let's see if James is going to go for a switchback. That's what he's trying to do, but he's getting pushed on understeer. And that compromised his attempt, unfortunately. Oh yeah, he was a little late on the brakes there, but he saved it. Well, what I should say is he managed to not hit the back of SGP. So he's done well there. Oh, we got on that curb. That curb, you can touch it a little bit. If you touch it slightly wrong, oh, she's nasty. Okay, 3 dabs of the brake pedal. Interesting, car in front of him, 3 dabs of the brake pedal. Car in front of him into the final corner, erratic dabs of the brake pedal. So I think what it is because his concentration is on SGP ahead, is not necessarily focusing on what he's doing with his feet. Sounds weird that, but this is just my opinion from what I'm seeing, and I can kind of understand it being so focused on the car ahead that the driving side of it just happens. It's like auto drive. Ooh, there was that understeer on that tight curb again. He's going to go for it here. It is on just. Rich has just about spotted him. That's a fair one. He was. Ooh, that's all right. Give an SGP a nudge. Go left, James. Go left. There you go. That was the right move to make, because now he's got clear road in front of him. Do not understeer. Oh, a bit aggressive on the downshifts again. Yeah, I really don't like that. It's not because of the sound I don't like it. It's you're not actually under control of how much the car's slowing down. I mean, okay, he's managed to keep hold of the position, but ooh, it's risky. Ooh. Okay, I'm gonna go back and have a look at that in a sec. That was a risky one. Right. Previously, with the early downshifts, it looked like he was using it to get the car slowed down. On this one, it's almost like using them to, yes, slow down, but to aid making the overtake, which you could say, well, he did it. But looking at it, I don't want to be cruel, but it's very erratic. It's not under control. And part of the reason I say that is because mid-corner, when it starts sliding, there's nothing James can do on the steering to really bring it back, and he can't do anything with the throttle. He can't let the throttle off because it's already bouncing the limiter. He could apply the brake, but if he does, it's just going to induce more understeer. So that's kind of where I'm going with the out of control bit. If he was more controlled with the gears, right, and had gone down into third at the right time for third gear, if he then got understeer, he'd be able to lift off and the car would slow down. But lifting off, it's already bouncing the limiter, so lifting off ain't going to do shit, unfortunately. Not in a quick enough time that would help with the understeer. The overtake here... Well, you know what? Right, okay, in all fairness, Groover is too far back to make the overtake on Fluffy Planet. At the same time, as I mentioned earlier, when Silver Shadow was kind of in this position, the move is not really on. I think if I was James, I would have backed out of this one. And partly because it is now going to be such a tight corner, but also I would have been looking at it and going, well, is Fluffy going to make that corner? Is Groover going to get involved in Fluffy? And now at this point it's become clearer, yeah, they're going to get involved with each other. Now Groover's in a situation where all he can try and do is try and turn right more so that he doesn't wipe out Fluffy, but now he can't because James is there. Now James does get a little bit of understeer on the way into the corner, and I can kind of understand that, because as he gets closer to the corner, perhaps realise, well, James was helped with a bump in the back there. Yeah, as James gets closer to the corner, he realises he's got to try and slow it down more. That's why he's fully on the brakes, because he's then seen what's going to happen, and he is fully on the brakes. Difficult one to say who would be at fault with that, because it was a bit of a late move by Groover on Fluffy. But what I would say is that if James had have just held back a little bit, he could have let those two have a little fumble in the jungle, and he could have driven past them quite comfortably. Unfortunately, it's resulted in James losing a few positions, and they've lost some as well. Or nothing he could do there. Nothing he could do there at all. Oh, is it going to be James and Groover take 3 into this right-hander? Okay, I wouldn't go for it. I wouldn't go for it. Good choice, James. It wasn't on. Because there was 2 cars there already, kind of side by side, it wasn't on. There wasn't the room to attempt it. Oh, Groover's squeezing. James braked nice and early there. Right thing to do. Look at the better exit. Pass 1, pass 2, gonna pass 3. Especially with a bit of help from SRI. Holy shit. Yeah, stay left, James. Slow it down. Oh, understeered. Understeered. This is what I was on about with the tighter entry into the... I know I said stay left, but I meant stay left and don't go too quick through the corner. I can kind of understand why he might have been on the power a bit early, looking at the cars that are like the pack that's right behind him and what he's involved in. But you should always be aware that if you're on the inside of the corner, you're going to have to slow down more than if you're on the normal racing line. And unfortunately for James, I think on this occasion, he attacks it more in 4th gear than he has done before. Brakes a little late, so he's in 3rd, but then... Oh, it's 3rd gear. So yeah, he attacks it quite hard in 3rd and does understeer and does give Groover a bit of a nudge into the barrier. I don't even want to look in the rear view. You can hear all the tyres squealing. You know what? Fair play to Silver Shadow. Fair play to Silver Shadow there. I like James, I do. I really like James. He's a good friend. Got lucky here. This is a perfect example of coming in a little bit too hot. Silver Shadow could have just gone for the apex of the corner. But because Silver Shadow spotted what was happening, he gave James the room to recover. Although, well, he gave James the room, and that was enough room for James to recover. Because James is out of control as we get closer to the corner. As the car's sliding around a corner, you're not in control. So fair play to Silver Shadow there. He could have closed the door on that one. Good luck. Now this is a situation where you have to be careful, because if you brake too soon, you'll catch the cars out behind. So it's a very tough situation, especially with that amount of cars. Okay, there is no way in a million years SGP is making an overtake up the inside of Dave the Ark there. See what I mean about you go straight on if you're up the inside? Now James has navigated this quite nicely. So that's kind of what I was saying he should have done on the previous lap. Okay, SGP isn't really defending from Gary. He is trying to attack Dave the Arp. I'll be honest, Steve, I don't know why you're trying to fit into that gap. It does result in Dave and Steve going off. Now, what I'd be interested to see here is, does James brake early for this one? And what does he do with his brake pedal? Doesn't quite brake early, but look at that. One big-ass press of the brake pedal calmly gets the car slowed down. It's stable, is round the corner, is now past 3 cars by braking properly. Well done, James. Now you've just got to get away from all them fuckers. Okay, so looking at it now, he's got the gap ahead to not need to defend. The car behind is too far behind. Let's see what he does with his brakes. Brake late, bit erratic, car's not stable. Oh, a bit wide on the exit. Now the car behind is closer. Now he's coming under a little bit of pressure. Doesn't need to defend, but might need to be aware that Gary could chuck it up the inside. I didn't look at the brake pedal, but the car did seem more stable going into the corner. Okay, so he's gone to defend, but to be fair, he didn't really need to. Going back to the racing line. Brake pedal's a little bit erratic. I can imagine the tension's now growing. We're on to the last lap of the race. Oh, okay, James has taken the wider entry into that corner for the first time. I'm interested to see if he did it in 5th. I think he accidentally took the right line. No, it's still downshifted, but that is the right kind of line. Missed the first apex, hit the second. Missed the first apex, hit the second. Oh, carried too much speed. Oh, just about got away with that. But now he's going to have to be careful as the pack start closing in on him. Okay, James goes defensive, don't blame him. He's gone to, I think he went to apply the throttle then. Oh, and hit the limiter. Let's have a look. Yeah, so he's downshifted to 3rd and gone full throttle. And yeah, car's a little unstable. Got a bit lucky that a few cars have had a collision behind. Gets through that corner nicely and there's a big crash behind him. So now he should be safe. As long as he doesn't make an error. Oh, SGP was saying that he hit the rear of Dave the Arp and he wasn't going for the overtake. It looked like he was. I'd say, I mean, it's been an interesting race for James here. Now, I would say, I know he can drive better than this, but at the same time, having not had any practice, the number one thing I would look for is, have you kept yourself out of trouble? And the answer there is, yeah, I think he has. He has kept himself out of trouble, and by doing so, he's been able to get a 4th place finish. Now, what I would say, if he'd have been able to get practice in, I think he could have easily been fighting a bit higher up the order. So, although it may seem like I've been very critical of James there, I've not been critical. Well, I have, but I'm not being offensive. Yes, I've been picking on the way that he's braking, but that's because it is visible to see that when he brakes once firmly, the car is stable for him. When he's on and off the brakes and he's bouncing off the limiters, the car is unstable for him, and that instability causes tyre wear. That tyre wear then causes instability. Then you add those into doing the same thing in the next corner, and it gets worse and worse, and then your tyres simply can't cope. So, like I say, although it might seem like I'm being very critical of James' driving, I'm actually impressed that he was able to do as well as he did with very limited practice, because this is a horrible bitch of a track. And from what I can remember, I don't remember seeing him brake too late over the crest of the hill into the right-hander before the bridge, which is the corner that I would expect to catch most people out that don't get a chance to practice, because it is so tempting to try and brake late there, but if you do, you ram people. So, to be fair, James has had a very, very good race there. There are a few things that I would recommend that he tries working on if he can. And one of them is simply the brake then shift and try and do it with a rhythm. I'm trying to think if there's any corners around this track. There isn't really corners around this track that I could show you kind of the rhythm that I mean. Maybe I'll be able to show it on some other kind of video, I don't know. But yeah, doing the gear shifts in the same timing makes life so much easier. So for example, Monza, with the chicanes turn 1, right? You can approach that corner, brake at about 150 meters, and you can start downshifting straight away if you want. But if you go pop, 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 pop down the gears, you are going to bounce off the limiter and you're not going to slow down as well. Whereas you can bang the brakes, wait a moment, literally brake, wait a second, and then shift, and you could shift down 5 gears very quickly without bouncing the limiter once and slowing down very quick. So that moment of wait after braking can benefit you, can help you slow down a hell of a lot more. But also that's one of those corners where you could incorporate a rhythm to it. So whether that rhythm is going down all the gears as quick as possible, or you hit the brakes, you pop it down 1, then you wait and let the revs drop a little bit, and then you go pop, 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 pop to get down the rest of the gears for the corner. And by giving yourself, like say, those rhythms, it allows you to get a continuity. So instead of it being 40 minutes of lots of different ways of taking corners, it becomes basically you are taking every corner exactly the same every single lap. And all of a sudden, it's a hell of a lot easier to drive because you never have to actually think about it. So it is something that I would suggest to all drivers. Get your braking under control, because the more controlled you are on your braking, the more stable you are in the corner, and the faster you can come out of the corner. So anyway, right, very good though from James, to be fair. And as I mentioned earlier on, feel free to check out his YouTube channel that he's started putting some new content on. It's called the Mental Mando Experience. I think his first program episode he's done was about Bob Lazar. If you've never heard of him, check out James's video about it, because it is very interesting. Anyway, I'm going to disappear now, so have a good one everybody, and I'll see you again soon.